Marcus Chun never expected to find an alien at the county fair. The autumn wind carried hints of kettle corn and diesel fuel as he wandered past the usual attractions, ring tosses, shooting galleries, and sugar-stunned children dragging tired parents from ride to ride. He'd only come because his sister Diana insisted he needed to get out more. 3 tours as a combat medic in Syria had left him preferring quiet nights at his small clinic to crowds and noise. Then he saw the poster. Marvel of the ages. The Crystal Woman of the Stars. The gaudy text framed an artist's rendering of a feminine figure that seemed to be made of living crystal, caught mid-dance. Marcus would have walked past, but something about the figure's eyes caught his attention. They held an intelligence, a sadness, that no artist could have invented. 2 shows left, called the Barker, a rail-thin man in a red coat. Witnessed the most extraordinary discovery of modern times. Marcus found himself buying a ticket, following the crowd into the massive tent. The interior was dim except for strategic spotlights illuminating various acts, jugglers, acrobats, the standard circus fare. But the audience pressed forward, drawn to something at the far end. That's when he saw her. In a reinforced glass enclosure, a being moved with impossible grace. Her form was humanoid but composed of what appeared to be living crystal, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They glowed like captured starlight, full of intelligence and unmistakable pain. Ladies and gentlemen. A tall woman in an expensive suit stepped into the spotlight. I present our star attraction, discovered in the ruins of a crashed vessel in the Atacama Desert. Through careful study, we've determined she's a silicon-based life form, demonstrating intelligence far beyond Earth's greatest minds. Marcus's jaw clenched. The showwoman's words felt wrong. He'd seen intelligence in the eyes of trapped creatures before, during his tours of duty. But this was different. The way she moved, the careful observation of her audience, this wasn't just intelligence, this was sophistication, culture. The Crystal Woman performed a series of acrobatic feats that seemed to defy physics, but Marcus barely noticed. He was watching her eyes, the way they scanned the crowd. When her gaze met his, something electric passed between them. Her movement faltered for just a moment, enough that only someone with medical training would notice. Beautiful, isn't she? The suited woman had appeared beside him. Regina Vale. I own this operation. Marcus shook her offered hand automatically, noting the too firm grip. Quite a show. Indeed. Vale's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though some people have trouble appreciating the scientific significance. Did you know I was once a xenobiologist? Studied potential extraterrestrial life forms all over the world. What happened? Vale's expression tightened. Life has a way of changing our paths. But now I have something truly unique, a being that could revolutionize our understanding of life itself. Marcus watched as the Crystal Woman completed another impossible feat. Does she have a name? We call her Nova. Vale's voice carried a note of possession that made Marcus's skin crawl. Though of course, that's just for the show. Can't very well pronounce whatever sounds her species makes. The show continued, but Marcus barely registered Vale's departure. He stayed until the very end, watching as Nova was led back to a covered section of her enclosure. Just before she disappeared, she turned, and Marcus could have sworn she nodded to him. After the crowd dispersed, Marcus lingered, pretending to be interested in the other attractions. He noted the security patterns, the location of cameras, the schedule of guard changes. Old habits from his military days kicked in automatically. We're closing up, sir, a guard eventually said. Marcus nodded, but as he turned to leave, he heard something, a melody so faint it might have been imagination. It came from the direction of Nova's enclosure, a sound that made his chest ache with an emotion he couldn't name. He had to know the truth. Sleep eluded Marcus that night. He sat in his clinic's office, reviewing everything he'd seen. The way Nova moved wasn't just skilled acrobatics, it was as if she understood physics differently. And those eyes held too much wisdom, too much pain, to belong to anything but a sentient being. By 3 a.m., he was deep into research about mysterious sightings in the Atacama Desert from 2 years ago. Most were conspiracy theory nonsense, but one article caught his attention, a small piece about unusual crystalline debris found in the desert, quickly confiscated by unknown authorities. The location matched what Vale had mentioned. The next day, Marcus returned to the circus earlier than the main crowd. He watched the staff preparing, noting how they avoided Nova's enclosure. Only specific handlers approached her, and always with strange devices visible on their belts. Back again? Vale materialized beside him, making Marcus suppress his instinct to flinch. She does have that effect on people. Just curious about your security setup, Marcus said casually. Must be expensive keeping something like this safe. Vale's eyes narrowed slightly. Former military, that obvious? The way you carry yourself. She gestured toward the enclosure. We take security very seriously. Can't have anyone getting too close to our star attraction. The threat was subtle but clear. Marcus forced a smile. Just admiring the operation. Must be quite a story how you found her. Indeed. Vale checked her platinum watch. If you'll excuse me, we have a show to prepare. As Vale walked away, Marcus noticed something he'd missed before, a slight tremor in her left hand, barely perceptible unless you were looking for it. He filed that detail away with everything else. The afternoon show was different. Nova's movements seemed more mechanical, less fluid than before. When her gaze found Marcus in the crowd, he saw something new in those starlit eyes, recognition, and perhaps a plea. After the show, Marcus waited until most of the crowd had left before approaching one of the younger staff members, a teenager wearing a maintenance uniform. Hey kid, he called quietly. Quick question about the night shift. The boy looked nervous. I'm not supposed to talk about Dash. Marcus pulled out a 50. Just curious about the feeding schedule. My niece is doing a school project on exotic animals in captivity. Money changed hands, and information followed. Nova was fed at midnight after the final security walkthrough. Only 2 guards remained then, and they usually stayed in their booth watching cameras. That night, Marcus returned with a backpack containing basic medical supplies and tools. Old habits died hard. He waited in the shadows until the main security sweep passed, then made his move. The lock on the maintenance entrance was simple enough for someone with his training. Inside, the circus was eerily quiet, moonlight filtering through gaps in the tent fabric. He moved silently until he reached Nova's enclosure. She was awake, sitting cross-legged in the corner. When she saw him, she stood gracefully, moving to the glass. Up close, her crystalline form had an iridescent quality, like oil on water. Her features were humanoid but refined, almost geometric in their perfection. Marcus pulled out his phone, opening a translation app. I know you're intelligent. Can you understand me? Nova tilted her head, then spoke in a language unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, musical and complex. The app couldn't translate it, but she seemed to understand him. She pointed to the ground, then traced letters in the air. Marcus quickly found paper and pen in his backpack, sliding them under the small gap meant for food trays. Nova's writing was precise, each letter perfectly formed. Danger, watchers not all human. Marcus cursed silently. I'll come back, he promised. Can you write your story quickly? Nova's hand moved faster than seemed possible, filling the paper with tight script. She slid it back just as a distant door creaked. Marcus grabbed the paper and melted into the shadows, his heart pounding. He made it out just as flashlight beams cut through the darkness behind him. Safe in his clinic, he read Nova's words. Last survivor of Crystalline Collective. Ship crashed. Vale found me. Contract says I belong to Circus now. But I understand everything. Please help. But careful, Vale dangerous. Lost research team to predator attack. Now sees all unique life as thing to cage. More guards than you see. Some not human. Some are hunters who helped cause my people's extinction. Marcus read it 3 times, his military instinct screaming warnings even as his heart ached at the desperation in those hurried words. Vale wasn't just running a circus attraction, she was keeping a prisoner of war, someone who might be the last of her kind. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Stay away from what isn't yours. Some doors shouldn't be opened." Marcus stared at the message, a chill running down his spine. He'd been careful, covered his tracks, but clearly not careful enough. He thought of those starlit eyes, of the loneliness and intelligence he'd seen in them, of the way Nova moved like she carried the grace of entire galaxies in her DNA. He thought of Vale's possessive tone, of the strange devices the guards carried, of a civilization lost and a survivor caged like an animal. Marcus deleted the text and began gathering supplies. Some doors shouldn't be opened, they said. Well, he'd kicked down plenty of doors in Syria. One more wouldn't hurt. 3 nights later, Marcus watched through binoculars as the last performance ended. Black SUVs lined the circus grounds, and men in dark suits entered Vale's trailer. His phone buzzed again, final warning. She's not what you think. Walk away. Marcus approached Nova's enclosure through the shadows, using the cover of supply crates. The maintenance door's lock had been upgraded, but he'd spent the last few days modifying an electronic bypass device. Inside, the air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Nova was waiting, her crystalline form pulsing with faint light. She pressed a hand against the glass as he approached. "I brought something better," Marcus whispered, pulling out an advanced translation device. Nova's voice filled the small space, complex harmonies that made his skin tingle. The device displayed, "You came back. Dangerous. Vale knows. How do they control you? You're obviously powerful enough to break this glass." Nova's next words made his blood run cold, neural dampener in neck. "Explodes if I leave permitted area. Also sonic weapons above, frequencies that shatter my kind." A door slammed somewhere in the distance. Marcus ducked behind a support beam as footsteps approached. "Think about the implications," Vale's voice carried through the darkness. "She's the only proof we have of crystalline consciousness. The military applications alone. The genetic possibilities are unprecedented," a deeper voice responded. "We've seen her healing abilities. Exactly why she needs to remain contained," Vale said. "For everyone's safety." After they passed, Marcus emerged. What did they mean about healing abilities? "My people heal through resonance," Nova's translation appeared. "Share energy, repair damage." Vale discovered this. "Makes me heal sick animals, test limits. But healing takes much strength. Connected to emotions. That's why you're so weak now." She nodded slowly. "Soon auction. Vale sells access to highest bidder. Military, private collectors, all want piece of last crystal being. The dampener, can it be removed? Requires key Vale keeps close. But not only problem." She touched the glass. "Have seen buyers. Some like me, not human. Work with Vale. Hunters who helped destroy my world. Why? What makes your people so special?" Her answer made him catch his breath. "We bridge worlds. Connect energies. Some would use this for weapons. Others for power. All would destroy what little remains of my people's wisdom." A security light swept past. Marcus pressed closer to the shadows. I need time to figure out the dampener. Can you hold on? Auction in 2 days. Her starlit eyes seemed to pierce through him. But why help? Risk much for stranger. Marcus thought about Syria, about watching people suffer under powers beyond their control. Because it's right. Nova's expression softened. I feel it too. The resonance. Rare between species. Dangerous. Dangerous how? Emotional connection amplifies abilities. Could hurt you if not careful. Already affecting you more than should. That explained the strange sensations he'd been having, the tingling when she was near, the way her voice seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his soul. Heavy footsteps approached. I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll figure out the dampener. Marcus. Her voice in his mind was crystal clear this time, bypassing the translator. Be careful. Vale not only monster here. He slipped out into the night, his mind racing with possibilities. The dampener was the key, but getting to Vale's trailer, finding the control mechanism, and disabling it without triggering the explosive would take perfect timing and more than a little luck. His phone buzzed one last time. She's in your head already. That's how it starts. Tomorrow night's show will be her last. Don't interfere. Marcus stared at the message, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on him. They were right about one thing, Nova was in his head, but not in the way they thought. This wasn't some alien manipulation. This was something older than both their species, the simple need to right a wrong, to free someone from chains they didn't deserve. He began gathering supplies for tomorrow night. Whatever Vale had planned, whatever non-human forces were at work, he had to move fast. 2 days until the auction. 2 days to save someone who might be the last of her kind. And somewhere in the circus grounds, in a glass cage under artificial stars, a crystalline woman with starlit eyes waited, her song a silent prayer in the darkness. The evening of the final show arrived with storm clouds gathering overhead. Marcus slipped through the crowded fairgrounds, noting the increased security presence. Men in dark suits mingled with the regular circus staff, their earpieces gleaming. He found a spot near Nova's enclosure, pretending to be another spectator. When their eyes met, her voice whispered in his mind, "Hunters here." They sense intentions. The show began, but something was different. Nova's movements seemed more deliberate, each gesture carrying hidden meaning. Marcus realized she was communicating, pointing out cameras, guard positions, telling him things she couldn't say aloud. Magnificent, isn't she? Vale appeared beside Marcus. The way she moves. Almost human, but not quite. Her smile turned predatory. You've been watching her quite intently, Mr. Chen. Military background, medical training, interesting combination. Hard not to watch, Marcus kept his voice casual. Don't see crystal beings every day. No, you certainly don't. Vale's hand brushed her jacket pocket where Marcus glimpsed the outline of a small device, the dampener control. Though sometimes they see us more clearly than we'd like. Later that night, Marcus made his final approach to Nova's enclosure. She waited, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent light. They're watching you now. Vale has files, knows about Syria. How much? Enough. She pressed her hand against the glass. Your pain, I feel it. The memories hurt you still. Stay out of my head, he said, but without anger. Neither are mine pretty. But perhaps I could help. My people heal more than physical wounds. She hesitated. Touched the glass. Marcus placed his hand against hers. Warmth spread up his arm and suddenly he wasn't in the tent anymore. He was floating in space, surrounded by stars, and Nova's presence wrapped around him like starlight. When his vision cleared, the chronic pain in his shoulder from an old shrapnel wound had vanished. That was, how did you dash? Simple healing. Fraction of what my people could do. Her expression turned sad. Veil forces deeper connection, takes more than I should give. But with you, energy flows naturally. The hunters, what are they really after? Some want healing power. Others want weapons. My people could connect minds across galaxies, share energy, create or destroy. Her starlit eyes met his. But connection goes both ways. I feel what you feel. Your memories become mine. That's why you're afraid to use your full power. You'd absorb everyone's pain. She nodded. Each healing takes piece of me. But with you, different. Your pain familiar, like mine. A commotion outside interrupted them. Through the tent walls, Marcus heard Veil's voice, the tests confirm it. Her genetic structure is unprecedented. The healing is just the beginning. The Chinese are offering 7 billion, another voice responded. The Russians, 10. After they passed, Marcus emerged from the shadows. They're talking about you like you're a commodity. To them, I am. But they don't understand full power of connection. Nova's consciousness brushed his again, showing him flashes of her world, crystalline cities that sang with light, beings of pure energy dancing between stars, the profound connection that linked all her people together. Then darkness, fire, screams. Marcus stumbled back, gasping. That's what you lost. What they would destroy. Veil thinks she controls power, but true connection cannot be forced, cannot be sold. Her eyes blazed. You felt it, yes? The resonance? Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared. Nova's expression turned urgent. Go. But Marcus her voice in his mind was warm. Thank you for seeing me. Really seeing. He slipped away into the darkness, his mind full of starlight and crystal songs. But as he reached his car, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It looked human, but moved wrong, its skin seeming to shift like liquid metal. The connection goes both ways, it said in a voice like grinding glass. Every time she touches your mind, you become more like her. More breakable. Marcus's hand tightened on his car door. You're one of the hunters. We cleanse. Crystalline consciousness spreads like infection. Changes other species. Makes them unstable. It smiled, revealing 2 sharp teeth. Tomorrow's demonstration will be her last. Stay away, or we'll shatter you both. The day of the demonstration dawned gray and cold. Marcus arrived early, medical kit hidden under his coat. He'd spent the night modifying surgical tools to deal with the dampener, if he could get close enough. The big top was packed with potential buyers. Veil stood center stage, Nova's enclosure behind her. Ladies and gentlemen, today you'll witness the full extent of Specimen Nova's abilities. Through careful study, we've learned to harness her healing powers. They wheeled in hospital beds containing 3 critically ill patients. Marcus's medical training told him they were terminal cases, cancer, organ failure, advanced degenerative disease. Now, witness true power. Veil pressed a button on her remote. Sonic emitters hummed to life. Nova screamed, a sound like breaking crystal. Her form blazed with light as energy poured from her into the patients. Marcus watched in horror as their conditions visibly improved while Nova's crystalline body began to crack. She's killing her, he whispered. That's the point, the hunter from last night materialized beside him. Crystalline beings are too dangerous to live. Their power infects other species, spreads across galaxies. We've spent millennia containing the contamination. Marcus saw his chance. As Veil focused on the demonstration, he slipped behind the enclosure. The maintenance panel yielded to his modified tools. Inside the control box, he found what he needed, the dampener's power supply. Nova's voice touched his mind, weak but urgent. Marcus, can't hold. He worked faster, rewiring the circuits. If he was right, reversing the power flow would. Step away. Vale's voice cut through his concentration. She stood behind him, gun aimed at his head. I lost my entire research team to an alien species. I won't lose control of this one. You're killing her. I'm advancing human knowledge. Imagine, controlled healing power, available to the highest bidder. Her hand trembled slightly. The military applications alone are exactly why we must end this. The hunter stepped forward, its human disguise melting away to reveal crystalline form, but black, light-absorbing. Your greed has compromised containment. The connection spreads. Vale's gun swung toward the hunter. What are you? Marcus took his chance. He slammed the reversed power supply into place. The dampener exploded. Nova's enclosure shattered. Energy rippled outward as she rose into the air, her crystalline form blazing with stored power. The hunter launched itself at her, but she caught it in a field of pure force. My people never spread infection, her voice rang in all their minds. We offered connection. Understanding. You chose fear instead. The hunter screamed as Nova's energy poured into it. But instead of destruction, there was transformation. Its black crystal form began to glow. You were like us once, Nova said softly. Before fear twisted you. Remember. The hunter's crystalline body chimed a pure note as ancient memories awakened. We forgot. The connection, we feared it because we forgot how to trust it. Vale raised her gun again, but Marcus tackled her. The gun went off, the bullet shattering a support beam. As the tent began to collapse, Nova's energy field expanded, protecting the civilians. Marcus. Her voice in his mind was stronger now. The connection between us, it was never contamination. It was recognition. Your people have the same capacity for connection, for healing. You just need to remember. She floated down to him, reaching out. This time when their hands met, there was no barrier between them. Energy flowed both ways, her cosmic awareness, his human compassion. Around them, the hunter's crystalline resonance joined in harmony. Your people killed mine because you feared connection, Nova said to the hunter. His people caged me because they didn't understand it. But connection freely offered, freely accepted, that's neither weapon nor weakness. It's evolution. The sound of sirens approached. Nova turned to Marcus. I must go. There are others like me, scattered among the stars. Now that I'm free, I can find them. Will you come back? She smiled, her crystalline form shimmering. The connection remains. Call, and I will answer. She turned to the hunter. Come. Remember who you were meant to be. They rose into the night sky, 2 points of light spiraling upward until they vanished among the stars. Where they had stood, tiny crystal formations sprouted from the earth, seeds of possibility, waiting to grow. Marcus helped the authorities sort out the aftermath. Vale went to prison for human trafficking and illegal medical experimentation. The sick patients kept their healing. And if sometimes, on quiet nights, he heard crystal songs in his dreams or felt starlight running through his veins, well, evolution had to start somewhere. He kept one small crystal, a gift from Nova. Sometimes it chimed softly, carrying messages from the stars. And sometimes, when he held it while treating patients in his clinic, they healed just a little faster than they should have. Connection, freely offered, freely accepted. It was a beginning.